The soul must, on the contrary, be capable of enduring the physical contact without suffering inwardly this sensuous reaction. Otherwise, there is nivrati, cessation of the object. Vishaya vinivartante, but no subjective cessation, no nivrati of the mind. But the senses are of the mind, subjective and subjective cessation of the rasa is the only real sign of mastery. But how is this desireless contact with objects, this unsensuous use of the senses possible? It is possible, param drishtva, by the vision of the Supreme. Param, the soul, the Purusha, and by living in the yoga, in union or oneness of the whole subjective being with that through the yoga of the intelligence, for the one soul is calm, satisfied in its own delight. And that delight, free from duality, can take, once we see the supreme thing in us and fix the mind and will on that, the place of the sensuous, object ridden pleasures and repulsions of the mind. This is the true way of liberation.
Hmm. Thank you, Sarita.
Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. So we had read this paragraph last time also, just for the sake of ending the session in a beautiful manner. It is not an external asceticism. This is what is called sannyasa, as it is clarified in this book. Arjuna also in the first verse of the 18th chapter is made to clearly ask the difference between the two things, sannyasa and tyaga. Sannyasasya mahabaho tattvam ichhami veditum tyagasya cha hrishikesha prithak keshi nishudana. Tell me separately what is sannyasa and what is tyaga. He is made to say in the first verse of the 18th chapter. External asceticism, external renunciation is sannyasa. Okay, whereas inner is what is called tyaga. This difference is very important to understand, because sannyasa, though it is necessary for some people because of their constitution, the way they are made, but many times it can lead to a sort of hypocrisy wherein you renounce things, but you have not been able to renounce them from within. So it's just merely an external token. It's not the real thing. Mithyacharaha sa uchyate. This is the phrase used in the third chapter of the Gita. Okay. So yeah, it is not an external asceticism. The physical renunciation of the objects of sense that I am teaching, suggests Krishna immediately to avoid a misunderstanding which is likely at once to arise, because we are being told that the objects of the senses, you don't pay attention to them, you withdraw your senses into yourself and like a tortoise, all that sort of thing. Not the renunciation of the Sankhyas, which rejects the Prakriti completely, because it does not know of a higher Prakriti. It simply knows the Prakriti and the Purusha. That's all the Sankhya knows. Not the renunciation of the Sankhyas or the austerities of the rigid ascetic with his fasts, his maceration of the body. I looked up what exactly maceration means. I'll just see it again. Maceration. Yeah. So steep, to emaciate, especially by fasting, to become extremely thin, to emaciate. Not the renunciation of the Sankhyas or the austerities of the rigid ascetic with his fasts, his maceration of the body, his attempt to abstain even from food, even Buddha did this and it came to a breaking point. And then, Sujata was the name of that lady or girl who came to him with that bowl of kheer, I think, or something. And that's when he realized that one should not strain the bow so much that it breaks. And that is after that realization, he attained enlightenment and basically proposed a way of balance, a middle path, not going to either extreme. Gita also uh, इसमें आता है yoga is not for somebody who नात्यश नतस्तु योगोस्ति न चैकान्तम अनश्नतः न चाति स्वप्नशीलस्य जाग्रतो नैव चार्जुन नात्यश नतस्तु योगोस्ति. I'm just looking the shloka number, it's somewhere in the fifth or sixth chapter. Natyas natastu yogo sti. नात्यश्नतस्तु योगोस्ति न चैकांतम अनश्नतः. Chapter 6 verse number 16. So basically the yoga is not for somebody who eats too much or eats too little or sleeps too much or sleeps too little and so on. It is basically for the person who is having balance in his consciousness. This is the shloka. It's very important because sometimes in the passion for the divine we can tend to get to certain extremes. It is to balance that tendency. Again, this site is not opening. What's wrong, man? Okay, doesn't matter. That is the 6.16. We can see it later on when it opens. Yeah. His attempt to abstain even from food. That is not the self-discipline or the abstinence which I mean. In one of his very provocative, thought-provoking aphorisms, I should say, he says there are two things which men have used to curb their enjoyment. This is not the exact words. Wrong abstinence and wrong indulgence. So either it is too much indulgence and then that is not the right way, or there is too much abstinence. Yeah, which I mean, for I speak of an inner withdrawal, a renunciation of desire. That is the tyaga, inner withdrawal. Well, I have stated this point several times earlier, but it takes time because वो sannyasa wala tendency, if you think of yoga, then to leave and go away and to give up everything externally, that may be needed for somebody for some period of time, total retirement or something of that sort. But certainly that is not the integral way of going about it, and that is not what the divine wants. The person, the entity who is speaking in the Gita, there is nothing higher than him. He clearly says so himself. 7.7 Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti. Parataram means more supreme. Mattaha means than me. No anyat, no other. So there is nothing else higher than me, very clearly. So, that is the thing to be kept in mind. कि जो गीता बोल रही है, that's basically the best way to go about it. Mankind has used two powerful weapons to destroy its own powers and enjoyment: wrong indulgence and wrong abstinence. Aphorism number 378. Yeah. His attempt to esteem, for I speak of an inner withdrawal, a renunciation of desire. The embodied soul, dehi, that is the word, dehi. The embodied soul, having a body, has to support it normally by food for its normal physical action. By abstention from food, it simply removes from itself the physical contact with the object of sense, but does not get rid of the inner relation which makes that contact hurtful. Cravings and all, jo hota hai food related. Yeah. It retains the pleasure of the sense in the object, the rasa, the liking and disliking. Rasa basically means taste. Ekdam usme jaye to it means sap, that which flows. इसीलिए इंस्पिरेशन, इट्स कॉल्ड सरस्वती, जो बहती हुई आती है, she who comes flowing into you. Literally, that is what the word Saraswati means. It retains the pleasure of the sense in the object, the rasa, the liking and disliking. For rasa has two sides. The soul must, on the contrary, be capable of enduring the physical contact without suffering inwardly this sensuous reaction. Because the soul is essentially free. It is it has what is called inalienable freedom which cannot be taken away from it, right? So if it is suffering because of the sensuous reaction, then basically that total freedom is not there. That means it is not the soul consciousness. The soul must, on the contrary, be capable of enduring the physical contact without suffering inwardly the sensuous reaction. Otherwise, there is nivritti. Nivritti means going away. Cessation of the object. Vishaya vinivartante. So, nivartante is the verbal form of nivritti, and vi is a prefix. Vi means going away. Vishaya vinivartante. This is 2.58, which we had I'd put on the group last time. Vishaya 2.59, sorry. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate.
Anmol bhai,
Yes.
here the rasa and the fact that the moment it is taken away, there is a negative reaction to it. But in the Isha Upanishad, and again here it's implying that there is a way of enjoying this sensual engagement without the withdrawal, which is there is a verse you talk about in the Isha which says that you should enjoy, right?
Sorry?
So there is a way by which you are still engaging with the sensual, the rasas, and yet enjoying it rather than having the withdrawal that's mentioned here. So there is that is the Isha method, right?
Yes. But what is that? Tena tyaktena bhunjitha. Usme keval itna likha hai. By that renounce thou shouldst enjoy. When he expands it further, he says, enjoyment of all by renunciation of all through the exclusion of desire. So when you get rid of desire, as long as desire is there, it is the vital which is enjoying it. Okay, the ego which is enjoying it. But when you get rid of desire, then it is the soul which enjoys. And the enjoyment of the soul, the psychic being, that is free from any reactions, any of this thing. It is pure enjoyment. It is pure enjoyment.
So
That is
that
the
means
true
the
ananda.
moment you are connected to the oneness within, the enjoyment is of that Purusha or of that Param Purusha.
Yes.
And that is where you don't have any stickiness to it. So you're still enjoying it. So here he's saying that it's the ego preference where you say, ye chahiye, ye nahi chahiye. Ye ho jaye, wo na ho jaye. Ye meri marzi hai, ye mil jaye, wo na mile. Hai na?
Exactly.
So the moment you go to the beyond this preference and whatever is coming on your path, you enjoy as a will of the Lord, connected in yoga with the Lord, then you're enjoying.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So
Thanks.
regarding what you said, preferences now. So I shared this sentence. Oops, ये क्या हो गया? I'm sorry. What is visible on the screen?
Make reading comfortable.
No, sorry. Now the text is visible, which we were reading?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So rejection, the phrase from the second chapter of the Mother, rejection of the mind's ideas, opinions, preferences, habits, constructions, so that the true knowledge may find free room in a silent mind. So very clearly he says that these 5 things you have to reject. ये मैंने ग्रुप में डाला था, rejection of the mind's ideas. You want things to be according to your ideas. Instead of that, idea with the capital I, that is the supermind. It is that perfect knowledge which should be driving us instead of our own ideas regarding how things should be or should not be. Rejection of the mind's ideas, opinions, preferences, habits, constructions, so that the true knowledge may find free room in a silent mind. So express वहां पे शिवबंधु ने बोला हुआ है कि this is what you have to do. Reject all this. And obviously, that total surrender to the divine will. That is how that
So,
kind of rejection.
Anmol bhai, this sentence is beautiful of these 5 points. If you could just share it again. And the moment you
I'll do
think
it.
and reflect,
Yeah.
I was just saying, if you reflect on these 5 points,
Yes.
it is the separate identity of us thinking of ourselves as an individual which creates these 5 aspects to us.
Yes.
The moment you think that I am not a separate individual, this delusion that we are in, that we are separate, the moment you go away from this delusion, these 5 things will automatically drop down.
Yes, exactly. That is what is called avidya, ignorance. Loss of the consciousness of oneness. That is what is called ignorance in the Isha Upanishad.
You have you had given this आपने दिया था इसमें essays on the Gita में rejection of the mind's ideas, opinions, preferences, habits, constructions.
It is a sentence from the Mother, 2nd chapter.
You had posted this.
I had posted it in the references for the last session because last time.
So ideas is what we get the ideas.
That's what.
And opinions is okay, our opinions.
Yes.
Preferences means
I prefer this to happen. I prefer that to happen. Instead of that, what you should want is what the divine wants. Your preference may be driven out of ignorance. It may not be what is needed for the cosmic evolution to go forward.
Okay. And habits.
Habits keeps you down to the tamoguna. Habit is basically something mechanical.
Okay.
Constructions. Constructions वही कि you have made certain mental constructs कि this is how things should be. This is how मैं ऐसे करेंगे वैसे करेंगे. Basically, see again, obviously all of this first of all has to be developed. One should be a developed individual जिसके खुद के कुछ ideas हों, opinions हों and all that. This is the stage where he's talking about where that individuality is developed and then you offer that individuality to the divine and then the divine basically, I have made my channel, so I have made my mind a channel mind for you. Something like this one line is there in his sonnet Surrender. To be dug thy channel mind. That instead of your mind being your mind, it becomes simply a channel for the divine to do through it, activate through it, whatever needs to be done. Like that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why the demand that he's making there is not easy. उसके बाद अब वो desire वाला जो vital वाला है, there are 13 things mentioned there. मुझे सारा desire, rejection of the vital natures, desires, demands, cravings, sensations, passions, selfishness, pride, arrogance, lust, greed, jealousy, envy, hostility to the truth. I think all 13 are covered like the hostility to the truth, so that the true power and joy may pour from above into a calm, large, strong and consecrated vital being. वो वाइटल का रिजेक्शन की बात कर रहे हैं एंड विदाउट दैट रिजेक्शन द नेचर ऑब्वियसली कैन नेवर गेट ट्रांसफॉर्म्ड. यू कैन हैव फ्रीडम फ्रॉम द नेचर. आप मतलब पुरुषा में आके बैठ जाइए एंड देन यू जस्ट लेट द नेचर बी व्हाट इट इज लाइक. दैट इज व्हाई यू हैव दीस काइंड ऑफ परमहंसस ना, जो या तो बालवत बिहेव करते हैं. सो देयर इज अ संस्कृत श्लोका फॉर दैट. बालोन्मत्त पिशाच जड़वत, 4 का वो संधि है. बाल लाइक अ चाइल्ड दे विल बिहेव. एग्जांपल इज रामकृष्णा. बाल उन्मत्त they'll behave like a madman. I don't know any मतलब clear examples हैं वैसे बहुत सारे ऐसे. पिशाच, gaul, they throw stones and all deliberately, or sometimes their nature is not in control. They are having that freedom, but उनका nature is not in control like that. Jadavat का example is that Jad Bharat from the Bhagavad Puran. So, but that is not the transformation desired by the integral view of things. The vital should be transformed. It has to become a servant of the divine, inner warrior, which is to fight the battles of the divine in the world, like that.
But maybe
sorry. Yeah, continue, Sarita.
Yeah, maybe they are behaving like that because they want to keep unnecessary people away from them.
That is true, but there are better ways of doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, Anmol bhai, I was saying the root cause, again, when we look at all the things we have to do, that means I'm a separate individual, I have to do. But if you look at the root cause, it's still the ignorance that you feel I'm separate. आपका
Yes,
ध्यान, मेरा ध्यान योगेश की तरफ है, क्योंकि
exactly.
योगेश के preferences है, योगेश का construct है. As long as I think there is a Yogesh, which is a separate entity, and I've believed it from the time I was born, there is activity that Yogesh has to do. But the root reality is my ignorance that actually it is the divine playing through all of us.
Exactly.
The moment you come to the root, the effort dissolves because now you're focused on the reality, which is the divine. You are connected, you become more and more inclined towards him, right? Because Kabir says it so simply, Prem Gati Ati Sankari, jisme do na samaye. When he's there, I'm not. When I am, he's not.
गली
So simple.
गली गति नहीं गली.
Gully, right? I mean, what I meant is that पूरा कॉन्सेप्ट हमारा बिलीफ है कि मैं अलग हूं, मुझे प्रेफरेंसेस हैं, मुझे कंस्ट्रक्ट है, मेरा अपना थॉट है, मेरे को ये चाहिए, बिकॉज मैं अपने आप को सेपरेट बिलीव कर चुका हूं. मुझे कोई यकीन ही नहीं दिला सकता दैट इट इज द डिवाइन विद इन मी which is engaging, having this conversation with the divine, which is in Anmol and all the other members on this call. I don't believe this. मैं शब्द में बोलता हूं पर मैं यकीन नहीं करता. पर अगर मैं यकीन कर लूं तो रूट पे आ जाऊं कि ये योगेश है ही नहीं, ये अनमोल अलग है ही नहीं, इट्स द डिवाइन engaging. So the point I'm trying to make, it's not so difficult the moment your mind opens to this reality that we are in ignorance.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And when you have this sort of consciousness of oneness, then the phrase of the Gita, Sarva Bhuta Hite Ratah, then you are Rata, engaged or delighted in the welfare of all existences. Sarva Bhuta Hita, not just Atma Hita. Sarva Bhuta Hite Ratah. You are engaged, then you are impersonal. Then you are not working for yourself. You are working, whatever you are doing, you are aiming that this should give maximum benefit to everybody without exception. Sarva Bhuta Hite Ratah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah. आप जो बोल रहे थे सेपरेटनेस वाला, उसके लिए गीता में भी एक श्लोक है in the 18th chapter, 18.21, कि the intelligence which sees the separateness, that intelligence is rajasic. Prithaktvena, that knowledge, is rajasic. Prithaktvena tu yajnanam nana bhavan prithak vidhan vetti sarveshu bhuteshu tajnanam vidhi rajasam. That knowledge which has this sense of nana means many, ये सब अलग अलग है, पृथकता, separate है, ठीक है. That knowledge is basically know that knowledge to be rajasic, and the sattvic knowledge is that which sees everything as one. That would be the shloka just before that, 18.20.
Yeah, please आप references भेज देना, because see, the moment we get the opportunity to join your call, when we share Sri Aurobindo's teachings of this, it opens you again, and it's like a wake-up call saying, wake up, you are all one. It's so powerful that we get a chance to wake up to that reality. And again, once the call gets over, a couple of days go back, the Yogesh pattern comes back and overtakes and becomes a reality again. So these two verses, if you could please share again on the references, this
just, but I'm saying
Rajasic and the Sattvic.
18.20 and 18.21.
Right. Thanks.
No problem. But the senses, otherwise there is nivritti, cessation of the object, vishaya vinivartante, but no subjective cessation. No nivritti of the mind, because the mind is still running after the pleasure. But the senses are of the mind subjective, and subjective cessation of the rasa is the only real sign of mastery. Yeah. So the indriyas, they are coming from the chief indriya, which is manas. So as long as the manas is having that, the sense mind is having that sense of pleasure, so you are not really free. But how is this desireless contact with objects? Again a question. But how is this desireless contact with objects, this unsensuous use of the senses possible? Look at this. It's a contradiction in terms, na? क्या बोलते हैं उसको? Oxymoron. Unsensuous use of the senses. On the one hand, you are saying that the senses, you should not be trapped in them, you should be free from them and all that. And on the other hand, you are saying कि आपको उनसे जो रस मिल रहा है, आपको उसको भी त्यागना नहीं है. तो ये कैसे possible है? That's the most natural question. How is this desireless contact with objects this unsensuous use of the senses possible. It is possible param drishtva. Drishtva, matlab, grammar ke sense mein I don't remember the word right now, but drishtva meaning basically having seen. Drishtva, having seen the Supreme, by having seen the Supreme. Param drishtva. ये वही 2.59 है. विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जम रसोप्यस्य परम दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते. I don't know why it's not opening. Last time also it was happening. I don't want to open any other Gita translation because many times the translation is not as accurate or as satisfying as it should be. Okay, I'll translate it. I'll read from the phone later on from the link you can see. There is an app for this, the website on Android and iPhone, both it is there. You can keep it and download it on your phone. It is possible. How is this desireless contact with objects? How is this unsensuous use of the senses possible? I'd forgotten last time, I think I'd mentioned, but divine sense, divine hearing, because thou art, ek aur karke, there are, I think 4 or 5 sonnets like this, wherein he describes the condition where even through the senses, you are perceiving the divine. Yeah, those are important sonnets to be read again and again, unke atmosphere mein enter karne ke liye, to get a glimpse of what that consciousness is like. It is possible, param drishtva, by the vision of the Supreme, param, the soul, the Purusha, and by living in the yoga, in union or oneness of the whole subjective being with that, through the yoga of the intelligence. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll come to this here. Second part also first, please. For the one soul is calm, Shanta, satisfied in its own delight, Atma Rata, and Atma Tushta also you can say. Satisfied ke liye actually the correct word is Tushta, not Rata. Rata means delighted. And that delight, free from duality, can take, once we see this supreme thing in us and fix the mind and will on that, that delight can take the place of the sensuous, object-ridden pleasures and repulsions of the mind. This is the true way of liberation. बहुत ही क्रूशल है जो यहाँ पे बोल रहे हैं कि ठीक है, बातें तो आप कर रहे हैं कि सेंसेस को त्याग दो एंड दिस एंड दैट, बट कैसे पॉसिबल है? इट इज पॉसिबल परम दृष्ट्वा, बाय विजन ऑफ द सुप्रीम, param, the soul, the purusha, and by living in the yoga in union or oneness of the whole subjective being with that, through the yoga of the intelligence. For the one soul is calm, जो इसके पहले described था वो सारा बुद्धि योगा ही था. We are at somewhere around chapter 2 verse number 50, somewhere around that we are there. For the one soul is calm, satisfied in its own delight, and that delight free from duality can take, once we see this supreme thing in us and fix the mind and will on that, that delight can take the place of the sensuous, object-ridden pleasures and repulsions of the mind. There is this jo thoughts and glimpses mein, and then this needs to be reflected upon a little more. Enjoyment is the helper, enjoyment is the bar. There is something like this. I think there is a line is there. I'm just looking for it. Is the bar. Desire is the helper, desire is the bar in that series, basically. Yeah. When we have passed beyond enjoyings, then we shall have bliss. Desire was the helper, desire is the bar. This is the thing. This is there in that small book called Thoughts and Glimpses, published during Arya. Yeah. When we have passed beyond enjoyings, then we shall have bliss, capital B. Desire was the helper, desire is the bar. So, but what he's saying here, दो बार ये word आया यहाँ पे, param drishtva, by the vision of the Supreme, when we see this supreme thing in us. So, by a, intense practice of yoga, whatever yoga is most natural to oneself, to somehow get a vision of that. और जब तक आप इसको संस्कृत में अगर सुने ना वर्ड्स को एंड यू मेडिटेट ऑन इट, यू रिपीट इट अ फ्यू टाइम्स, विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः। विषया विनिवर्तन्ते, विषयों से विनिवर्तन्ते, निराहारस्य, यू डोंट ईट, निराहारस्य देहिनः, देहिनः इज द सोल, विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जम रसोप्यस्य परम दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते। बट एक बार उस परम का दर्शन आपने कर लिया, रसवर्जम रसोप्यस्य, देन इवन द दिस थिंग, द रसस दे, मतलब उसमें जो आसक्ति है, दैट इज गॉन। आई रीड द एग्जैक्ट ट्रांसलेशन।
Which श्लोक is this?
2.59। द वेबसाइट इज एक्चुअली डिसअपॉइंटिंग, वो खुल ही नहीं रही है।
It's okay, your book है, book
Yeah,
में
yeah,
देख लीजिए।
yeah. I'm actually reading from the app now on my phone. Just give me a second.
हाँ,
Yeah,
59.
yeah, yeah. So the translation is, if one abstains from food, nirahara, sorry, the objects of sense cease to affect, vishaya vinivartante. But the affection itself of the sense, the rasa remains. The rasa also ceases when the supreme is seen. The rasa also ceases when the supreme, the rasa ऐसा नहीं कि जीवन का रस खत्म हो जाएगा, no, you get the true rasa. The rasa also ceases when the supreme is seen का मतलब है आपकी जो सेंस प्लेजर में आसक्ति थी वो समाप्त हो जाएगी। इन अदर वर्ड्स, जैसे मिस्टिक्स वगैरह बोलते हैं, साधुज एंड ऑल दीज पीपल से, उसका एक बार दर्शन करने के बाद आपको और कोई चीज रास ही नहीं आए। Once you have seen Krishna, once you have tasted that Ananda, nothing else will appeal to you, and your whole consciousness, its movement towards, will be getting fixed in that delight, that consciousness, and that way. तो बट उसके लिए, that's what I'm saying, बार बार पहले भी हम कई बार बोल चुके हैं, by an intense effort of yoga, one needs to first get that vision of the Supreme, कैसे भी करके. It can take longer or shorter depending on several factors, but that is absolutely necessary. बिना उसके मुक्ति नहीं मिल सकती। कहना आसान है, ये छोड़ दो वो छोड़ दो, छूटे तो तब जब वो मिले, और जब तक उसकी ग्लिम्स नहीं मिलेगी, उसका टच नहीं मिलेगा, तब तक ये नहीं छूट पाता है, राइट? एंड वंस यू हैव
अनमोल
टेस्टेड
भाई,
दैट, देन ऑल दिस पेल्स इन कंपैरिजन।
अनमोल भाई, आई हैव ऑलवेज हर्ड दैट दे से कि आप डिवाइन की तरफ सच्ची एब्सोल्यूट प्योरिटी से एक कदम लो तो वो 10 कदम लेता है आपकी
Yes,
तरफ।
yes,
ये भारत में सब
this
कोने
kind of
कोने में
language
लोग
is
चाहे,
there. This kind of language is there in this book also, in the chapter called the way and the bhakta, जो 12th chapter का corresponding essay है, similar language is there in this book also, in that chapter.
right? So I'm saying I don't think we know people who've had the absolute pleasure and blessings of the to visualize the Paramatma. But all I'm saying is that if you read what you just in this statement, the power lies in the fact that the capability of the will. हम सब इस कॉल पे जुड़ रहे हैं 5-6 महीनों से भी ज्यादा से, दैट मीन्स देयर इज सात्विक टेंडेंसीज दैट वी ऑल रियलाइज दैट यार ये है, एक भगवान है, राइट? बट द विल टू ओवरकम ऑल योर प्रेफरेंसेस, योर कंस्ट्रक्ट एंड से ये सब छोड़ के भगवान मुझे तू ही चाहिए। यू अगेन ऑलवेज टेल अस के पानी में अगर मुंडी डालो और वो कैसे तड़पता है, जिसको वैसा विल है उसी को मिलेगा। इट इज सो ऑब्वियस। If
Absolutely.
you don't, we basically don't have that. The
Yeah,
more
yeah.
I listen, the more I
Absolutely.
realize हमें वो commitment and will नहीं है. That is the downside. वो
Absolutely.
रास्ता इतना मुश्किल नहीं है। दर्शन
Absolutely.
से पहले भी वो 10 कदम लेके तुम्हें लेगा। विल तो
Absolutely.
दिखाएं, हम विल
If
ही
you
नहीं दिखा
truly
रहे।
desire, then it is not possible not to get him.
Right, right.
That true desire is lacking. Absolutely. I mean, I can say this for myself also 100%. That true desire is lacking. वो glimpse कभी कभी मिलता है, लंबा अपना हम लोगों का evolutionary journey है. Maybe there are certain lifetimes which we have dedicated just to this. और उसके फलस्वरूप हमको ऐसी बुक पढ़ने को मिल रही है. In this lifetime, we have done some great punya और gone through intense periods of sadhana, etc., etc. But उसको sustained रखना, and वो central sincerity. This is what Sri Aurobindo calls the central sincerity. Central sincerity, तो I am sure it is there, but वो कि that true desire for the divine, because the desire for the divine, it alone can liberate you from all other desires. Otherwise, you can never really get free from desires.
राइट अनमोल भाई, अगर वो चीर दे ना, वो दिल फाड़ के निकल जाए कि भगवान तू ही चाहिए, तो होगा। देन
Yes,
इवन इफ अभी ग्लिम्स नहीं आया, वो ग्लिम्स भी दे देगा। मुझे तो
absolutely.
ये
This
भरोसा
actually
है दैट
reminds
इट्स
me of
नॉट
that.
दैट।
Reminds me of that
राइट।
birthday message. Sorry, sorry, you were saying something?
नो नो, आई वाज जस्ट सेइंग दैट दर्शन होगा, उसके बाद हमें वो चाह आएगी। आई डोंट थिंक सो, आई थिंक इट्स वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस, बट वो चीरती हुई
It is
डिजायर
work in
चाहिए कि
progress, and
भगवान तू।
basically the consciousness is in a process of gestation. अभी वो पक रही है, and when it is, वो जब gestate हो जाएगा ना fully, then the shell breaks and the thing comes out. That is what happens. अभी वो तप रहा है, अभी वो पक रहा है basically, right? इसी के लिए
राइट राइट।
श्री अरविंदो का it's worth remembering, almost saying in every session, a veil behind the heart, a lid over the mind divides us from the divine. Love and आपने बोला ना चीर दे फाड़ दे, love and devotion rend the veil. So love and devotion have that power, that one pointed love and devotion, they have that power, they will rend the veil. Love and devotion rend the veil. In the quietude of the mind, the lid thins and vanishes. So simply by, even nama japa, kirtan, bhakti, puja, simply loving the divine, doing everything in his love. But उसको supplement करने के लिए most people they need some kind of sadhana of the bhakti yoga also, पूजा और नाम जपा और एनीथिंग मंत्र, मदर ऋषि अरविंदो ने मंत्र दिए हैं. सो दैट लव एंड डिवोशन, इट हैज टू बी मेड इंटेंस, देन दैट वेल इज रेंट. वो दरवाजा अंदर से खुलता है, बाहर से नहीं खुलता. जब वो अंदर से खोलेगा, कभी कभार ऐसे दीज व्हाट्सएप पे आते हैं, सर्कुलेट होते हैं कि ये दरवाजा अंदर से खुलता है, ये आप बाहर से कितना भी कर लो, जब रेडीनेस होगी तब वो भीतर से खोलेगा, एंड देन यू कैन हैव अ ग्लिम्स, नॉट अदरवाइज.
बहुत सुंदर, ब्यूटीफुल, थैंक यू।
Yeah, welcome. So 8:47, we had started at around 8:08 or 8:09. So who'd like to read the next paragraph? अरोड़ा जी आप पढ़ेंगे? मदन गोपाल जी?
Yes, yes, yes. I will
Please
do
read.
it.
Please read.
I'll do it. This is starting with
Certainly, self-discipline, self-control
one
is
minute.
never easy.
Let me slightly font. Hmm. Certainly, self-discipline, self-control is never easy. All intelligent human beings know that they must exercise some control over themselves, and nothing is more common than this advice to control the senses. But ordinarily, it is only advised imperfectly and practiced imperfectly in the most limited and insufficient fashion. Even, however, the sage, the man of clear, wise, and discerning soul who really labors to acquire complete self mastery, finds himself hurried and carried away by the senses. That is because the mind naturally lends itself to the senses. It observes the objects of sense with an inner interest, settles upon them, and makes them the object of absorbing thought for the intelligence and of strong interest for the will. By that attachment comes, by attachment desire, by desire distress, passion, and anger, when the desire is not satisfied or is thwarted or opposed, and by passion, the soul is obscured. The intelligence and will forget to see and be seated in the calm, observing soul. There is a fall from the memory of one's true self, and by that lapse, the intelligence will is also obscured, destroyed even. For the time being, it no longer exists to our memory of ourselves. It disappears in a cloud of passion. We become passion, wrath, grief, and cease to be self and intelligence and will. This, then must be prevented and all the senses brought utterly under control. For only by an absolute control of the senses can the wise and calm intelligence be firmly established in its proper seat.
Yes. So, yeah, no, we are not at around 50, we are at around verse number 60. उसमें थोड़ा हम आगे पीछे चल रहे हैं. Shri Aurobindo style is like that. Certainly, self-discipline, self-control is never easy. This is what Arjuna says later on in the 6th chapter. कि आप जो बोल रहे हैं, it is like having to control the wind, he says. Ayati shraddhayopeto yoga chalitamanasaha, like that. No. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramathi valavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayo rivasu dushkara. 6.34. ये माइंड का कंट्रोल और ये सब जो आप बोल रहे हैं, इट इज लाइक कंट्रोलिंग द विंड. अब हवा को कौन रोक सकता है? लाइक दैट. या सो सर्टेनली सेल्फ डिसिप्लिन, सेल्फ कंट्रोल इज नेवर इजी. All intelligent human beings know that they must exercise some control over themselves, and nothing is more common than this advice to control the senses. But ordinarily, it is only advised imperfectly and practiced imperfectly in the most limited and insufficient fashion. So this controlling the senses. Yeah. Wait, the Jnanindriya and the Karmindriya. If you see something tempting, then the Jnanindriyas have a tendency to take the rasa of that. Or, if you are provoked, then the Karmindriyas have a tendency to respond to that in some fashion or the other, like that. Ordinarily, it is not advised, it is only advised imperfectly and practiced imperfectly in the most limited and insufficient fashion. Even, however, the sage, the man of clear, wise and discerning soul, who really labors to acquire self-mastery, 1 minute, finds himself hurried and carried away by the senses. 2.60. Yeah. The verse is Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha. Vipaschitaha is the word for the wise. Indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham manaha. Yatato hyapi means even though he is engaged, वो यतन कर रहा है, he is trying to control himself. 2.60. Even the mind of the wise man who labors for perfection is carried away by the vehement insistence of the senses, O son of Kunti. Indriyani pramathi yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham manaha. Carried away by the senses. That is because the mind naturally lends itself to the senses. It observes the objects of sense with an inner interest. We had already covered these two verses sort of in the last two sessions. Both of them, these were mentioned. They are coming now sequentially. 2.62 and 63. Objects of sense with an inner interest, settles upon them and makes them the object of absorbing thought for the intelligence and of strong interest for the will. So the two verses in Sanskrit. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. So dhyayato means when you concentrate on them. On what? Vishayan, the objects of the senses. Pumsaha, when the men. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangas teshu upajayate. Then sanga or attachment. Teshu means in them. Upajayate means arises. So when you concentrate on something, then you get attached to it. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangas teshu upajayate sangat sanjayate kamah kamat krodho abhijayate क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः, सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः, स्मृतिर्भ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो, बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. These are the two verses. वो quarter by quarter we will take it up. Yeah. It observes the objects of sense with an inner interest, settles upon them and makes them the object of absorbing thought, dhyayato, for the intelligence, and of strong interest for the will. By that attachment comes dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate. Sangat sanjayate kamah. By attachment, desire comes. Sanjayate means giving complete birth. Jayate means to give birth. Sam means totally, fully. So fully you are engaged in then desire. Sangat sanjayate kamah. कामात क्रोधो अभिजायते. काम से क्या होगा? By desire, distress, passion and anger. When the desire is not satisfied or is thwarted or opposed. So in the Gita shloka, it simply says kamat krodho abhijayate. Krodha is translated as anger, but he has used two other words. Distress, passion. By desire, distress, passion. This, in some ways, that's why people say that Essays on the Gita is not just a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. It's like, Gita like Windows 95 and 98, like that. So it is a, whatever gaps were there in the Gita या कुछ उसमें रह गया था आधा अधूरा, तो उसको श्री अरविंदो ने पूरा कर दिया. He sometimes fills in some words like this, right?
Yeah, actually I'm realizing इसमें जो essays on the Gita में जो दिया है, they're all from the essays on the Gita only.
You're realizing in the message of the Gita.
हाँ, message of the Gita में जो इनका दिया है, they're all taken from these only. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. कि संस्कृत की एक वर्ड काम के लिए, सॉरी, क्रोध के लिए, कामात क्रोधो अभिजायते. From desire, krodha, but instead of just one word, he could have just said by desire, anger, right? But instead of just one word, he's, for the sake of explanation also, you could say, आगे जाकर के ऐसे cases आएंगे where you will find कि एक नया word ही उसमें ऐड किया. So that's why I'm saying he's, जो भी गीता के अंदर थोड़े बहुत gaps रह गए थे, even Sri Aurobindo has completely filled them. By desire, distress, passion and anger, when the desire is not satisfied or is thwarted or opposed. And by passion, the soul is obscured. Kamat krodho abhijayate, krodhat bhavati sammoha. Sammohat smriti vibhrama. Smriti vibhrama basically means that memory, that sense of who you really are, that you are the soul, that gets lost. You fall into a kind of temporary amnesia. You forget who you are. यही वो यहाँ पे बोल रहे हैं. When the and by passion, krodhat bhavati sammoha. The soul is obscured totally. Sammoha, not just moha. Sammoha, completely covered up. The intelligence and will, buddhi, forget to see and be seated in the calm observing soul. क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः, सम्मोहात् स्मृति विभ्रमः, स्मृतिर्भ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो. The buddhi gets kind of destroyed. Intelligence and will forget to see and be seated in the calm observing soul. There is a fall from the memory of one's true self. This is what smriti means. The memory of one's true self. मैं कौन हूं? What does the Gita say? Who are we? Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhutaha sanatana. We are an eternal portion of the divine. We are eternal individuals. If this idea of eternity is understood or realized experientially somewhat, you can never be distressed. Whole eternity is there in front of you. Kahi baat ki chinta hai? When whole eternity is in front of you, then how can you be worried by anything? Nothing to worry. You can't do it today, you can do it tomorrow. You haven't achieved it today, you will. There is whole eternity in front of you. Right? Yeah. So, one second. And by passion, the soul is obscured, the intelligence and will forget to see and be seated in the calm observing soul. There is a fall from the memory of one's true self, and by that lapse, Smritir Bhramshat Buddhinashat Pranashyati. And by that lapse, the intelligent will is also obscured. Yes. Buddhinashat. Yeah. Smritir Bhramshat. When the Smritir Bhramshat, जब जो मेमोरी है उसका भ्रष्ट हो जाती है वो स्मृतिर भ्रंशात बुद्धिनाशो. The buddhi gets destroyed. Buddhi is translated as intelligent will, and buddhinashat pranashyati. And by that lapse, the intelligent will is also obscured. That's why anger and lust and all these, जो षड्रिपु बोलते हैं ना, the 6 enemies, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Tradition में these are the षड्रिपुस. Even there is a verse in the Rig Veda regarding these. मैंने पहले भी एक बार शेयर किया था. Shri Aurobindo expands the list and detail में वो the mother में rejection of the mind's ideas, opinions, preferences, habits, constructions, rejection of the vital natures, desires, demands, cravings, sensations, passions, selfishness, pride, arrogance, lust, greed, jealousy, envy, hostility to the rule. All उसमें jealousy, envy उसमें अलग करते हैं. In Sanskrit there is just one word, matsar, but yeah, like that. So for the time being, it no longer exists to our memory of ourselves. Yeah. The intelligent will does not exist. For the time being, it no longer exists to our memory of ourselves. It disappears in a cloud of passion. We become passion. We are the soul, and buddhi is seated in the soul. Buddhi yoga ho rakha hai, but we become passion, wrath, grief, and cease to be self and intelligence and will. एक बार फिर से जस्ट मैं इसका संस्कृत बोल रहा हूं. ध्यायतो विषयान पुंसः संगस्तेषु पजायते, संगात संजायते कामः, कामात् क्रोधो अभिजायते, क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः, सम्मोहात् स्मृति विभ्रमः, स्मृतिर्भ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो, बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति.
Anmol bhai, it ends by saying we cease to be the self, intelligence, and will.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at it, when we get very immersed in an activity, it is your intelligence completely engaged with it, and the will starts working in identification with the task as if the outcome is something which it gets totally identified with, right? So this tells you, because of this, how when it outcome does not happen, you get distraught, you get angry, and you forget your real identity, which is the soul consciousness. So this is telling you how the breakdown happens, what should be the right sequence, which we learn from these two verses of 262 and 263, that our engagement or work should be. कि आप ऐसे काम करिए कि ये ब्रेकडाउन वाले रास्ते पे आप ना जाएं. तो हमें क्या करना चाहिए?
डिजायर को एनिमी की तरह रिजेक्ट करना चाहिए, इंद्रियों को कंट्रोल करना चाहिए. जो 3.42 में बताया था, टेकिंग रिकोर्स टू दैट, इंद्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इंद्रियेभ्यः परम मनः, मनसस्तु परा बुद्धि, यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः. ड्रॉ द इंद्रियस इनटू द मनस, ड्रॉ द मनस, विड्रॉ इट इनटू द बुद्धि, एंड विड्रॉ द बुद्धि इनटू द सेल्फ. कीप द बुद्धि स्टेशनड इन द सेल्फ. अपने जो ट्रू सेल्फ है, अपनी बुद्धि को वो ठीक जगह पे रखो. ये करना. एंड बेसिकली प्रजहाति यदा कामान, जहां से सीक्वेंस शुरू होता है 2.55, रिजेक्ट ऑल डिजायर्स. That rejection has to be done. Desire is the enemy of the soul's progress. It basically keeps you slave to the nature. मैंने लास्ट टाइम वाले सेशन में बोला था, आई थिंक आई फॉरगॉट टू पेस्ट द रेफरेंस. मदर सेड ट्रू फ्रीडम इज टू बी फ्री फ्रॉम डिजायर. इसमें सीक्वेंस का वो कुछ नहीं है कि आप इसको रिवर्स करके वैसे, बट बेसिकली बी कॉन्शियस एंड you know, be in the true self. Remember who you are. You are the soul. You are an eternal portion of the eternal. उसके लिए आप जो भी प्रोसेस करते हैं, whatever yoga you do, whatever process you are doing to keep your mind silent or to keep your desires quiet, etc. Yeah.
And as you said, if you are anchored in the self And whenever the desire stickiness comes, you become aware that look, if you get
Yes.
into, अगर उस पे आप चिपक गए तो फिर आपको खींच लेगा बाहर फिर से. तो
Exactly. When the
डिजायर से
vision,
आपको प्रैक्टिस कर करके जैसे वो हवा, इन दैट वर्ड शी सेज के वो इंटेलिजेंट लोगों को भी, सात्विक लोगों को भी खींच के चला जाता है. यू जस्ट quoted that. So you have to constantly build a pattern of becoming aware of desire,
Rejection.
trying to lure you, trying
Yes.
to attract you. उसको
Yes.
उससे बचना है.
Yes, rejection of the vital nature's desires. उसमें पहला वर्ड ही desires है. वो rejection वाला जो sequence है ना, तो rejection of the desires. Having this
Anmol bhai,
दृढ़ संकल्प, हाँ, just 1 second. Having this दृढ़ संकल्प कि I will root myself in the soul and I will function according, I will function from within outward. Desire क्या करती है? वो आपको आउटवर्ड चीजें जो हैं वो आपके बटन बाहर से प्रेस होते हैं, सो यू आर नॉट एबल टू, यू नो, जो आपका इनर फाउंटेन ऑफ डिलाइट है, इंस्टेड ऑफ लेटिंग दैट एक्सप्रेस इटसेल्फ, यू आर बीइंग कंट्रोल्ड बाय थिंग्स फ्रॉम आउटसाइड. आजकल ये इतना मार्केटिंग और ये रील्स और ये सब फेसबुक वगैरह ये सारा जो है, उस वजह से बहुत कॉमन है. ऑल द टाइम सम और द अदर डिजायर इज ट्राइंग टू इन्वेड यू. If nothing else, something will just appear on your smartphone screen when it is, suspended. So it's a very challenging time that way evolutionarily. It's not easy. Arora ji? Arora ji?
Anmol bhai, it looks very simple in understanding.
Yeah.
Mere understanding, it's not difficult, I'll say.
अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येन च गृह्यते.
आप ऊपर सेंटेंस देखिए, इसी पैरा में ऊपर, even however the sage,
yes,
the man of clear,
yes,
wise and discerning soul, who really labors to acquire complete self-mastery,
finds himself hurried and carried away by the senses.
Sri Aurobindo or the Gita is focusing on a person who has done perhaps his best, finds himself hurried and carried away by the senses. The real problem perhaps comes how to measure what all is to be done by me and what all is being done by the divine. What is my effort? And it's very easy to demarcate. अच्छा भाई मैंने ये कर दिया, but divine नहीं. मतलब it's a very complex. It looks very complex, but perhaps when you do it, it becomes simpler. Perhaps again, because we have yet to tread that path. I remember a legend, and you talked of Jal Bharat. In his previous incarnation, he himself was a deer. He had to take birth as a deer because in the previous one he was a king and a rishi, and
he had gone to the forest to meditate, but
he was sitting on the bank of a river, and he saw a female deer pregnant and being flown away, being in the stream, and then he grabs it and the child survives, the female deer dies, and then his whole concentration was on that the child.
उस फीमेल डियर में आसक्त हो गया.
फीमेल डियर में नहीं, जो बच्चा हुआ,
हाँ,
उसके,
अच्छा, हाँ, sorry, हाँ, in the offspring, yes.
And then in that consciousness he leaves his body, and look at it's a canons of justice is not easy to understand. He had to take birth as a deer, but with all the assets of his past karmas intact. So he survives and he goes away, and then he comes as Jal Bharat.
Correct. So, and that's why he becomes Jada this time, ताकि वो किसी चीज में फंसे ही नहीं.
नहीं, वो तो खैर आगे. And how he is saved from the sacrifice by that's another story. But my point is only that this the intensity or the expense of efforts on the individual, those Sri Aurobindo and Mother, all of them have, the scriptures, it's well laid out everywhere. But focusing on the rejection is more important, or focusing on the divine is more important?
Both are important.
Okay, suppose I
You
fail
will not
somewhere.
be able to focus on the divine until the rejection is, carried out
Oh,
thoroughly.
okay. Oh, no. Suppose I am faltering and I pray.
Pehla word actually, see, as you are saying, the first thing that Sri Aurobindo says is aspiration. So you must aspire towards the divine. You must want to reach the divine consciousness. Next step which he says is rejection. तो वो होना चाहिए, दोनों होने चाहिए. But rejection of desires is क्योंकि the temptations, the desires, वो सारा sensual pleasures का जो pull है वो तो आएगा ही आएगा inevitably.
And all of us or anybody, any human being who comes on the earth is in that process. He has not reached the top. He has not reached the pinnacle.
I'll tell you
So,
something. Sri
no,
Aurobindo ने एक लिखा है एक जगह पे, the mother and myself went through a self-imposed bareness of life for a fairly long period of time, and then he says the freedom without the discipline is given to a few. तो आप जस्ट सोच के देखो, अगर मदर और श्री अरबिंदो को सेल्फ इम्पोज्ड बेयरनेस ऑफ लाइफ प्रैक्टिस करने की जरूरत थी. एक जगह और लिखते हैं, इन माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग, वन सेकेंड, if you cannot live a life as bare as the barest anchorite, you cannot be spiritually complete. And the mother and I myself, self-imposed bareness of life, ऐसे करके, and then he says the freedom without the discipline is given to a few. So if they needed to practice that self-discipline and all, तो मैं और आप किस खेत की मूली है?
What I'm saying, I'm not saying anything new, but I'm looking at a stupendous challenge. And at the same time, the grace and the lifting up and all that together, there is no mathematical formula which is given to everyone.
Yeah, there cannot be. Mathematical नाम का कुछ नहीं है. It is the evolution of the soul, and it is natural, organic. The grace of the divine is there, all that.
If I can't measure myself,
हाँ.
how can I measure anybody else?
Yes, exactly. एक और श्लोक इसमें जस्ट ये था 2.61. I'll just read that in Sanskrit, and यहाँ पे उसका ट्रांसलेशन है, तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्येन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. This then must be prevented and all the senses brought utterly under control, for only by an absolute control of the senses can the wise and calm intelligence be firmly established in its proper seat. इसमें 3 ट्रांसलेट किए हैं out of the 4. युक्त आसीत मत्परः, this is the first time when he talks of regarding him as the supreme. Gita mein matparah, regarding me as the supreme. Yukta asita, you should be seated in yoga regarding me as the supreme. I'll just read the translation from the app of this thing. Yeah. So having brought all the senses under control, he must sit firm in yoga. Yukta asita, wholly given up to me. Matparah, for whose senses are mastered, of him the intelligence is firmly established in its proper seat. Shivaji has a question. Shiva Chinnasamy ji.
I was thinking that's why there's a lot of emphasis on peace and samatha.
Exactly.
Because
peace is the first thing, he says, base of yoga.
Yeah, and when these two things are reasonably established, even
Yes.
if not completely, then it becomes relatively easier to do
Yes.
mastery over senses.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
we are by default stepping back.
In fact, exactly what you're saying, sir. So few verses after this in the Gita, Nasti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayatah shantihi ashantasya kutah sukham. So he speaks of shanti. This is 2.66. And he says, if you are ashanta, then how can you have any happiness? Ashantasya kutah sukham. So that idea is just going to follow. It shows how much you are resonating with what we are reading. Lovely to see this.
I think the next para, when you read it,
I think he will mention it there. Yes.
It is coming. This cannot be done perfectly by I think it will come.
Yes.
Anmol, I had 2 questions.
Yes, please, Sarita.
Not really related to today's thing. One is that when we are saying Satchidananda is inside us. So when you had explained Sat and Chit and Shakti and Anand, the four, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiv, and Krishna.
Yeah.
So that means all the four gods are also inside us.
Yes. In us
So they're
too,
all
Krishna seeks for love and joy. In us too, Shiva struggles with the world's grief. ये दो exact lines हैं from the second last sonnet of Sri Aurobindo, titled The One Self.
okay. So that means all of them are present inside us.
Very
So there is
amazing and beautiful question, Sarita. Very, very nice question. In us too, Krishna seeks for love and joy. In us too, Shiva struggles with the world's grief. वहां पे in us बोल रहे हैं. कृष्ण आपके भीतर हैं, शिव आपके भीतर हैं.
okay. So if we are praying to Shiv, or we're praying to Krishna, or we're praying to Vishnu, we are actually praying to all of them at the same time.
It depends on your attitude कि आपके अंदर वो sense of वो कितना है. If you are praying to Shiva, then the prayer is heard by Shiva. And see, ultimately all prayers go to the supreme divine only, to nobody else. But yeah, I mean, if you go to a Shiva temple, let's say, or if you're praying to Shiva, or if you're praying to Krishna, then it is that God who will respond to you.
Oh, acha. Okay. But
They are
actually,
there
they're
in
all
you. See, again, when you say God, that is the personification of that, grade of consciousness, or that, क्या कहना चाहिए, aspect of consciousness. ठीक है? But when you're saying that this is inside me, then you are putting the same thing in psychological terms. And when I say personification, I don't mean कि Vishnu is the personification of consciousness. Vishnu is there, he's self-existent, and he is the eternal personality of consciousness. विष्णु की वजह से consciousness नाम की चीज है. Similarly, it's not that कृष्ण, जैसे वेस्टर्न लोग बोलते हैं ना, personification of आनंदा, वास्तव में कुछ नहीं होता है, ये सब गॉड्स आपने क्रिएट किए, ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं है. The gods are self-existent, and it is their emanation or their presence in you which you feel psychologically in this form inside yourself.
okay.
So when you feel Shakti within you, you are feeling the Shiva within you. When you feel Ananda within you, you are feeling the Krishna within you. When you are feeling consciousness within you, you are feeling the Vishnu within you. When you are feeling that pure existence, that immortality within you, you are feeling the Brahma within you. That's what it means.
Okay. I get it.
Second question?
Second question was, I was just wanting to know what is the difference between a mantra, a stotra, and a shloka?
Okay, so मंत्र का जो definition है, मननाथ,
गायत्री मंत्र, हाँ.
या जो etymological definition मुझे याद है अभी, मननात् त्रायते इति मंत्रः. त्रायते means protect करना. तो जो आपके मन को protection देता है उसको मंत्र कहते हैं. That is the literal etymological definition. Okay?
मन को प्रोटेक्ट करता है.
या मननात् त्रायते, something like this. मननात् त्रायते इति मंत्रः. उसमें मन आ गया, त्रा आ गया, उससे मंत्र बनता है वर्ड. ठीक है? वैसे मंत्र का बहुत डीप मीनिंग है, एज एक्सप्लेन्ड इन सावित्री. मंत्र इज समथिंग which is a sound which is coming vibrating out of the infinite, and since it is coming from the infinite, the japa of the mantra can take you to the infinite.
Okay.
आप मंत्र का रियल मीनिंग वो समझो. ठीक है? श्लोका इज एनी, मतलब जो आपने रचना की है. So in a chanda, if it is not in a chanda, then I mean, I guess if it, like for example, some Upanishads are not exactly verses, they are half prose, half verse. तो उसको, I mean, I don't know actually, shloka word का मुझे धातु वगैरह नहीं मालूम है, but shloka is basically a verse. In English, the Sanskrit word shloka is translated as verse. So I guess जो half prose हैं, half verse हैं, उनको shloka नहीं बोलेंगे. Shloka is basically a poetic verse in Sanskrit. A mantra can be a shloka. A mantra can be a shloka, okay? Because it is having that chandas. Poetry ka kya, how do you recognize poetry? Through the rhythm, through the chandas. So Gayatri mantra is a mantra also, it is a shloka also.
Because we was trying to understand, which is this a mantra or is it a shloka? So
अभी आप समझे, shloka is simply a poetic verse. The word verse, V-E-R-S-E in English, is used for a piece of poetry. The opposite word is prose. इसीलिए प्रोजेक का मतलब इंग्लिश में होता है बोरिंग.
नहीं, तो जो अब हम जो गीता के जो कर रहे हैं, these are श्लोक.
These are श्लोक also, these are mantra also. Because मैंने वो कई बार श्री अरविंदो का डाला है. The japa of the Gita verses can give you the realization of that which is contained in the verse.
Oh, so this is a mantra and a shlok, and even Gayatri mantra is a mantra and a shlok.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, and what is a stotra then? जैसे राम रक्षा
Stotra
स्तोत्र
is
है.
a set of verses. वो स्तुति word से आता है. A set of verses which are written in the praise of somebody, in the praise of a deity or a guru or whatever.
तो जैसे हम जो राम रक्षा स्तोत्र है, उसका जो लास्ट है राम रामेति रामेति रमे रामे, that is considered as a very powerful mantra. I
So
was
it is a
again
mantra
getting
also because it
confused.
will protect you.
Okay.
समझ
So
गए?
anything that is protecting the mind is a mantra.
Yeah. Just one minute, I'll just see what is the dhatu in the word shloka. हाँ.
Yeah, Anmol bhai, after that, if you could also, there's this beautiful recitation you've done of the sukta of the first mandala of Rigveda, when
Yes.
you've talked about shlok and this, what is this? And if you could explain the translation in Hindi or English, because that was in Sanskrit and
I'll
it was
copy paste the
beautiful.
English translation from Sri Aurobindo's volume.
हाँ.
Yeah. So shloka जो शब्द है उसमें the धातु is श्रु, श्रवण. So I guess जिसको आप श्रवण करते हैं something like this. मूल धातु श्रु, शाब्दिक अर्थ जिसे सुना जा सके, वह पद या छंद जो श्रवण परंपरा के योग्य हो. That which is basically fit to be heard. And only that will be fit to be heard according to the Sanskrit standards, which is in verse. आप समझ रहे हैं, सरिता? हाँ.
But it is still confusing.
Shloka is all the Sanskrit word shloka is always translated in English as verse, verse. The opposite word is prose. Prose मतलब
yes.
simply ऐसे ही लिखा हुआ है.
The sentences.
Sri Aurobindo is one of those few people जिनका जो prose है वो भी इतना poetic होता है. If you read the Life Divine, you will be like, wow, ये prose है कि verse है, क्या है ये? इतना rhythm है इसके अंदर.
अच्छा.
Getting it? चलो.
Okay.
Anything
you.
else?
No, that's.
We close with silence. 1 minute.
Yes.
Okay. I'm stopping the recording.